Hello, everyone. Welcome to ITS 372. So today is lecture day. We are currently on week 4, so be aware of that. The semester moves pretty quickly. At this point, usually I like to start letting students know that we have our first exam, exam 1, on week 6. So think about that. So this is week 4. We have our first exam on week 6, basically what you've done in lectures and labs. Today I'm going to introduce the first main topic, one of the main topics of system administration, which is cron task scheduling, I should say, task scheduling. And as it applies to Linux, it's going to be the utility of cron, or the cron utility. There's a few other miscellaneous topics as well that I'll need to cover, but basically that's the plan. So as you can see, we are in, last week we covered this module, right? Services, and you went over all the Linux commands for that. This week we are focusing on task scheduling and cron, and then grep and awk. So that's really, this week, that's sort of the topic, and then after that we'll start DNS at some point as one of the services that we're going to take a look at this semester. So certainly today, and task scheduling, I think it's a really very interesting topic. I think you'll really enjoy, what you can do with it. The advantages of it. And in essence, if we were adding automation with scripting, cron just gives you even more automation, if that's even possible, right? So as you know, a server is usually, unlike your laptop or your computer, where you sometimes turn it off for whatever reason. A server, on the other hand, is usually a device that's on most of the time, right? And it only goes down when it, scheduled maintenance, something, an update, but usually it's a device that is always on. So in a sense, it makes sense that it should be a device that has a type of automation that it's even more powerful, right? That it can do things. So it can create backups of its own data. It can create, various things. And so that's what we're going to take a look at today. So today we will take a look at that, take a look at those ideas. You can see here I have 2 sets of slides, right? The more managerial type of information from the managerial book, and then more the technical side from the technical book. And then this should be the lab for this week. So that's the lab assignment, and you can see there's also a Wireshark reading assignment as well. So this week, just these 2 things. And then as a separate entity, grep and awk. I believe I have, I have a set of slides here. Some of my notes from previous class I just uploaded here. So that's our focus. And then there's a few miscellaneous topics, as I said, that I will cover. So today, I think cron is really nice. And we'll take a look at, we'll start with that, I think. I feel like starting. All right, so last week we were talking about the Unix way, and I still need to wrap that up, and I'll come back to it. But I do want to create a cron lecture today. We're gonna have a cron lecture today. All right, so let me. I think I have it. Okay, so this is, there we go. We'll just start with that. Okay, so cron, right? So we're gonna start discussing that. And as you can see, the information is usually in the slides already. You can follow along, or you can take your own notes. but I'll just use the whiteboard. Okay, so I'm sharing the whiteboard here. All right, so this topic, as I kind of motivated, it's really called task scheduling. Okay, and you know, when you talk about services and you talk about managing a server, you definitely want to have this available. All right, so we can take a. Oh, I'm going to change color, task, right? Scheduling. Also, it's in your book, so if you're following along in your book, you know, certainly feel free to read it. It's also there. So task scheduling means that we have a server. As you know, servers have times and dates. You kind of went over that in one of the handouts. So this is your server. And all the services that it has, all of its files and everything, it can follow that time, that clock, if you will. And it's got an internal clock. And then because of that internal clock, you can pretty much schedule whatever you want. And we can also make use of, so basically you set up when you want something to happen. So it's all a matter of when and what, right? And the when is really, is based on dates and time, so date and time. And the what is based on either Linux commands or scripts themselves. You can use any of these, okay? And that's basically what we're going to be doing today, or this week, I should say, is we are going to, understand this idea a little bit better, and then understand the syntax of how to make this happen. So for that, we are going to use the Crontab utility, which is already in your handout, in your Word document there. All the steps are there to start Cron. It'll work on any Ubuntu. The instructions will work on any Ubuntu, so it could be seed 16 or 20, or it can be, just a regular. All right, and then additionally to that, we are going to look at all the a few other things, miscellaneous. Let's just say miscellaneous. Okay. We'll look at some miscellaneous topics later as time permits, little topics that I don't really have where to put them. And so I kind of have to spread them out over the class. One of the things we'll look at, miscellaneous things like TCP dump. Right, backups, I think, is one of the things we'll start to look at. Backups, and it's probably, this is discussed in the managerial things as well. We'll look at grep and awk, and I'll give you a type of a research homework assignment. Should be a lot of fun. Finding files. And even though I usually, when you think about scripting and you think about Linux, you can think of several languages possibly. My preferred language, just because it's so versatile and we use it so much in the CIT program, so it makes sense to kind of reinforce it, is Python. But there are others, like there's one called Perl. Perl is kind of an older one. It's useful. I mean, sure, there are companies that built their scripts on Perl, so sure, they want to pay a lot of money for somebody to come in that knows Perl. That's almost like saying, I think you probably heard in the news that when they were cutting the checks for the, the whole pandemic checks thing, apparently the Treasury's mainframes were written in, I want to say, I actually learned this language many years ago. But I haven't used it. I mean, because it's such a, not obsolete, but old language. If anyone remembers, remind me. Foxtrot or something like that. I can't remember. But it escapes me right now. No, that's Firefox. It's not. It's let me see. Like the Fortran version. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant. The point is, some of those languages are pretty old. Or somebody, you guys do remember? COBOL, Fortran. There you go. Those are the languages. Thank you guys. So those languages, you know, pretty old, and yet they would pay really good money because their mainframes were still using them, right? So there are a lot of languages out there. There's obviously, you know, Shell or Bash, right? And these are some of the top ones that I would say. These two in particular. But you know, usually I'll do scripts in Python. However, every now and then I'll throw in something in another language, kind of just to expose you to it. But so today, at some point in the lab, we'll do a Perl script. Okay, we'll do a Perl script, kind of like that. Although usually I won't give you any assignments that where I say write a Perl script, or I'll provide it for you. All right, anyway, so these are some of the miscellaneous topics, but in particular, today I want to focus on task scheduling, which is really fun, honestly. This lab has a lot of problems, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's talk a little bit then about cron. All right, so cron. And as I said, all this is in your book and in the slides. All right, so periodic, this is called basically, it falls under the idea of periodic program execution. Okay, so periodic program execution. All right, and this, you know, this is sometimes referred to as the Cron Facility. All right, what is the Cron Facility? It's basically, if we provide a formal definition, cron is a Unix, right? So remember, it's the Unix version. It's the Unix facility, you know, the tool that we use that allows you to schedule programs for periodic execution. Programs, instructions, let's just say, of any form, of many forms. You can actually provide the path to a script and then it runs the script, or you can provide the path or an actual Linux command on there. So that's really what we need to look at. So, but to have a formal definition, we can say cron is a Unix facility that allows you to schedule programs, instructions for periodic execution. Okay. So you can use cron. So what are, you know, some of the uses? So basically anything. But some examples: clean up data, clean up, you know, erase files, etc. So clean up data, let's say. All right, so clean up data. It can also be used to back up files. Right, so we'll do several backups in labs. But basically, you take a file, you zip it maybe, you compress it, and you archive it, right? So you save it somewhere. And you know, you don't have to do that manually. That's the whole point, right? So imagine if you manage 100 servers and you had to do all those things manually, that would be pretty terrible. So hopefully you get by now that the point of this course is to kind of set your mindset to automation, and in particular here with Linux. So backup files, you know, let's say every night. So you want to back up your files every Tuesday in in the very early morning. So at 3 a.m. you back up all your files. You create backups periodically. You can call scripts, right? You can, aggregate data. And so on, right? So lots of things that you can do. Now, cron is basically a daemon. So daemon, we'll need to define this term. It's already in your slides, but at some point we'll define it. But basically, it's just a program that kind of runs in the background on your server, much like when you run a script on the terminal, except here it's not associated with a terminal. So it will not be associated with a terminal, and it only needs to run in the background, basically. So every program that runs in the background and is a daemon has usually a D at the end. So whenever you look for this, like when we start to look at grep and awk and grep and everything like that, you're looking for that. That indicates that it's a daemon, and the daemon is running in the background. All right, so really there isn't that much as far as theory with cron. I think you get the idea, right? So you open it, schedule some dates and times, and schedule what you want to do. That's really what it is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how it works, right? So that's really the idea. So you have Crontab Files, right? So it's basically that you really open up in like Nano or some editor, you're going to open up, a text file, really. Remember, the Unix way, pretty much everything is a file, and cron is no different, right? So there's no GUI, no point and click. In our example, right? In our example, we're just going to remember the goal is for you guys to get really comfortable with the terminal and practice, basically practice a lot. So so the Crontab files, basically you set up there what to run. So you set up what to run, what to run and when to run it. And I set this before, and when. So obviously your time and date when to run need to be correct. All right, so that's definitely kind of a suggested thing. That needs to be accurate, and when to run it, and these whatever you put in the Crontab file is called a Crontab entry. So Crontab entries. All right, that's what we're going to be calling them. Okay. So the word Crontab stands for cron table. Okay. So Crontab actually stands for cron table. Okay. Now, by default, remember that everything about Linux is about access control, right? So it's always access control is central. And we looked at that last week, right? We talked about who owns the files. There's a user and a group. We talked about the permissions. So hopefully all that is clear for you. By default, any user may add entries to the cron schedule. So by default, but you can always go in and say, you know what? Only this group is allowed, right? As part of the access control. But here, by default, any user may add entries to the cron schedule. Okay. Now, Crontab entries are stored in separate files for each user. So each user has their profile, their file, usually in a directory such as, so if you want to find them, they'll be stored in var. Var is usually a folder. We haven't looked at file system analysis yet, but var is basically a folder that is in the root directory that is designed to store lots of data, right? So anything that has to do with like logs, you know, something that would be like for every user, you know, I'm going to store a lot of files, you know, you want to put, you know, web things, you know, var ww, etc. And usually you have something called a spool, which, you know, kind of, you know, it's basically where you can have a lot of things stored in there. So in there would be something like cron and crontab. So you usually store that kind of information in that folder of your file system. And then basically Crontab entries, then as you start adding them, will direct cron to run commands at regular intervals. So your handout that's provided on, we'll take a look at that in a sec, but your handout already provides the commands to start your cron utility basically. So now let's imagine that you've already started the cron utility, so you'll be faced with a text file. So this is going to be a text file, and in this text file, you're going to add entries. Every line is an entry related to cron, okay? So that's what we're going to take a look at today. So really, it's not meant to you write scripts or code or anything like that in here, right? Instead, you write entries, one-liners, and then what we're going to learn now is we're going to learn the syntax of this of each entry, right? So what should it look like? And it's pretty intuitive. But once we define that, then you'll be able to solve problems. You know, like a lot of the problems that you'll have this week are going to be things like, okay, I want you to back up files in the temp folder every Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. Or more complex, so I want you to do this Mondays, not specific date, but Mondays. Or I want you to do it Mondays and Fridays, you know, so those kinds of things. So you'll have to define or develop, you'll have to develop the intuition of how you do that. So now that we've talked about this, next step is we're going to define a cron entry. So how does one work, right? Or cron entries. So we're going to define how to do one of these. So these are each one-line entry in the Crontab file has the following format. So let's just say that. So each one-line entry in the Crontab file has the following what's going on? The following format. All right, so they have the following format, which is as follows. Okay, so they will start with the minutes. So they'll start with the minutes, then followed by the hours, then followed by day of month, then followed by month itself, and then weekday. All of these are separated by a space, okay? So all of this will be separated by a space. But that's basically the format. We'll do examples, obviously. Okay. All right, so then after this, you have one. So let me actually underline them. So minutes, hours, day of month, weekday. So there's 5 items that are needed, okay? And then the next item, the 6th item, if you will be the command. So the command will be very similar to what you would type on the Linux terminal, right? Either to call a script or to call a command, basically. In the command itself, you can have spaces. So you can have, see, these cannot have spaces. There can be no spaces here, but the command allows spaces. So basically, the way that you would type, so this allows spaces, because in the terminal you would write commands and they usually do have spaces in between the different flags, etc., that you have on there. Okay, so white space basically, or spaces, separates the fields. However, the final field command can contain spaces within it. Okay, so I just said that. All right, so now let's take a look at the first 5 fields, because even though it seems easy, it might be a little less easy than you think. So that's why we'll need to practice with some of these. So the first 5 fields. So the first 5 fields will specify times at which cron should execute the command. So the first 5 fields specify when to run. Let's just say when to run whatever you wrote in the command. So when to run the command. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at, in this table, I think it's already in your slides. So double check. All right, so basically, let's take a look at the description of the fields and then, what they represent. So there are 5, right? So we got minutes, we've got hours, we've got day of month, we've got month itself, and we've got weekday. Okay, so we have that. Take a look at the table here. And so the first thing we can look at is, what does it mean? So minutes just means minutes after the hour. Minutes after the hour. And this is important to understand this, the semantics of this, because, sometimes it's not as intuitive. Hours is hours of the day, or hour of the day, which hour of the day it is in military time. So, so it's going to be hour of the day. The next one is going to be day of the month. So that's a numeric day within a month. Numeric day within a month. Then you have the month of the year. Month of the year. And then finally you have the day of the week. And so you have to use all of these parameters in combination to figure out when something should happen. So day of the week. All right, so then now what we need is the range, right? So we're going to have ranges of what values are acceptable here. And there's going to be a few special values as well, right? Which are the / and the asterisk. But for now, let's just look at the ranges. So for minutes, it goes from 0 to 59. Okay. From hours, it goes from 0 to 23, where 0 is going to be midnight. 0 is going to be equal to midnight. Okay. Then you have day of the month, so that's going to be 1 to 31. Notice that it's inconsistent, right? Some things start with 0, some things start with 1. Month is going to be from 1 to 12. There are 12 months. And day of the week is going to go from 0 to 6, where 0 is equal to Sunday. All right, there you go. So that's basically this you need. So this is something that you definitely need to be able to create your cron entries. Okay, so to be able to successfully create cron entries, you will need to use this. Now, so let's think of an entry, right? So an entry in any of the fields, in any of the 5 fields, in any of the file fields can be one of the following. So it can be a single number. So you can enter single numbers like, you know, day of the month 3, or, you know, or something like that. It can be a pair of numbers. A pair of numbers. Separated by a dash. And this will, of course, indicate some kind of a range. It could also be kind of a list, a comma-separated list. It could be a comma-separated list of numbers, let's say. All right. Or it could be an asterisk. Which we all know asterisks usually imply something like a wild card, right? You know, so that means usually something like all or some, right? So that's what you will probably use it for. Okay. Okay, so an asterisk is a wildcard that represents all valid values for that field. So let's actually define it then. So let's define it here. Let's just say an asterisk which is that symbol, by the way. Oops. An asterisk is a wild card. It's a wild card that represents all valid values for the field. Okay, so now I think that, you know, that's pretty much all the definitions that we need, and now we are ready just to do some examples. Okay, just to take a look at some examples of how cron works. And this should be fun. And this will allow us to look at a few other things like redirection, etc. That should be pretty interesting. All right, so syntax of cron. Basically, if you want to add comments, which is what I would recommend, one thing I recommend for the lab is add one entry. You can write all 5 entries, right? You can write all 5 entries, but comment out 4, and then usually just leave the one that you're trying to test on, okay? So that you don't create any like confusion between the entries, any unforeseen results. So, you know, whenever you want to add a comment, you know, you use, you know, the pound sign. So use to comment out entries, or your notes, right? So you might want to have an entry and a description on there, you know, that kind of thing. So let's take a look at just an example. So now let's just do an example of how this would work. All right, so we'll look at an example of something that you might want to do. So we have, so let's look at, remember, there's going to be, let me use a different color actually. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is going to be usually the command. All right, that's 6. So we do here, the first value could be, let's use another one, could be, let's just look at it. So 0, 15, 30, 45, right? That's the first value. Second value, asterisk. Next value, third, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. And then this one, echo, echo just means like print. And so you say something like echo hello. That's your, you know, your hello world of cron, right? So you can even say hello world there. Hello world. Okay, so that's your first example. So what does this mean? It means that the command is to echo hello world. So it's going to print out echo hello world, and it's going to do it when? That's the question. Well, the asterisk means all is a wild card that represents all valid values. So basically it means all valid values. That's every day, you know, so basically every day, right? So because some of these are, you remember, some of these are weekdays. So which weekday? Every weekday. Month, which month? Every month. Day of month, which? Every day of month. Hours, every hour, right? That's what that means. But if you look, minutes on that example is restricted. So minutes over here, this minutes is a little bit restricted, and it says it's provided a comma separated range there that says, like a list, oh, I want it to run at 0 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. That's basically it. So this translates then, if we wanted to put this in words, displays hello world every 15 minutes. And that's basically how cron works, right? So now you start to craft these. So on the assignment this week, I will give you these. So I'm going to give you the words, the problem, and then you have to write the entry, plus you have to obviously run it, and show evidence that you got it to work. Does that make sense, guys? That will be part of your lab this week. Any questions?
I don't think so.
No? Making sense? Good. Good, very good. All right. Okay, so let's continue then. We'll do, and what we're going to do now is I'm just going to do several examples similar to what I just did, and you can follow along, and then that should be enough for you to solve the rest of the problem. Go ahead and now do another one, another fun one. All right, let me switch over to another color. All right, so let me do this one. Oops. All right, so let's do, again, so 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, right? That's the first one. Then 7, 18, then asterisk, 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 and then a.exe. That just means it's a program, right? So my prog maybe should be more intuitive. My prog. So you're going to run that executable. That's you did chmod, made it an executable, and now you're going to run this program. So here then we can say this runs, or sorry, yeah, the command, this Crontab entry runs my prog, and then now we need to fill in. Okay, so we need to think about these two fields, right? So that would be what we want. So let's take a look back over here. Minutes and hours. Those are the two ones that we have defined. So this is minutes. And this is hours in military, right? Military time. So what do you think? Run my prog. Daily. Why daily? Because all days of the week, right? And it's all months and it's all days of the month. So basically we know that. Runs daily. Okay, that's sorted out. And we're gonna run on which hours? From, what is that? 7 a.m., right? From 7 a.m. What is 18?
6 o'clock.
6
6
p.m.
p.m.
So from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Right, so we know that I'm going to run my prog daily from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and also every 10 minutes during that period, right? That's why you have, because you have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and back to 0 again. So during that time period, my prog runs daily from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. every 10 minutes. Do you guys see that? Any questions?
None for me at least.
Questions? All right, great. Let's do, I'm going to need to put more of these into one slide because I have a 20 slide limit here. All right, so I'm going to do a bit smaller. Let's try another one. Over here. We're going to do this one. 0, 0. Notice that I make these spaces really big just because, so it's readable, but it would just be like one space. So asterisk, 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 and then some command find. We'll take a look at these commands shortly, time permits. So find, and then I'm searching for something in the root directory, dash name, tensor dot py, some file. I'm going to look for that file, right? But really, this is the command. We don't really have to worry about this so much because this is what the other thing that you're learning in this class, right? All the Linux commands for various utilities, or later on, we're going to take a look at scripting and so on. But the key thing that we want to understand right now is when we're scheduling this one, right? So what do you guys think on this one? Anyone want to try, hazard to guess, maybe?
It will run the command at midnight every day.
That's right. Very good. Exactly right. Every day. So runs the command at midnight because 0 minutes, 0 hours. So we have this we've defined already, right? That this is midnight, right there in hours. Very good. So then we can go back. Let's switch color here. All right. So this will be then runs the find command, which is just something for searching. We'll take a look at that. You'll actually get a research, little research homework on this command. So runs the find command at midnight. That's very good. All right, good. Let's try another one. Let's do this one. 0, 4. Right? And then sh my script.sh. If you notice, if I wanted to run Python, I would say Python my script.py, right? That's how I would do it for Python. Here, I'm using another scripting language called Bash. So we'll talk about this as well shortly. sh is actually what is called in Linux a symbolic link, which basically means it is itself a file, but it's actually pointing. It's not a file. It doesn't have data or the data itself. It actually points to something called bash or dash. This is actually the program that's very important. We also need to talk about. And then this program, bash, so technically is actually bash that runs my script.sh. We'll talk about that also, but just be aware right now, all I want to do is run the script, right? So I'm just running the script, and I'm calling, shell basically, and I'm running my little bash script, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So for now, then, this entry means, so this entry should mean, Yeah, so let's, so what do you guys think? What is this one doing? It runs. What does it run?
Run my script sh every day at 4 o'clock in the morning. 4 a.m.
So exactly, very good. So it runs a shell script, myscript.sh, which is called a shell script, very similar to Python, except the syntax is different. So the syntax is not the same, but it's a script just like the ones we've been doing. Right, exactly. So it runs myscript.sh, which is a shell script, every day at 4 a.m. Perfect. Perfect. As you can see, these are really fun to do. So technically, so the question is, would it be 5 a.m. because 0 is midnight? What do you guys think?
I believe it would still be 4 because 0 is midnight. Yeah, like you just showed.
Since 0 is midnight, technically it's 12. So 1 is 1 a.m. Yeah, exactly. So 4 would be 4 a.m. Good comments. Great comments. All right, so let's keep. So we'll look at the handout in a while, but sure. Yeah. So now let's. I'm gonna erase this part here. All right. So now let's do another one. So these are a lot of fun. We could literally do hundreds of these. And also remind you, week 4 exam is coming up. Week 6, so you can expect on your exam, you either get the word definition and you come up with the cron entry, or you get the cron entry, come up with the word definition. Either one. But these are short and pretty easy. All right, let's do another one here. Switch to red. All right, so this is going to be 30. 3, 1. Okay, that's an asterisk. This is an asterisk. Okay, and this is going to be CP temp my file to desktop A, let's say. All right, so what's the command first of all?
Copy
That file
my file. Yeah.
to desktop and name it A, right? So you can see already that's it. If you want to create backups, you create a backup, right? Because you just copied some file to another place. That's it. So you'll have to do some problems like that throughout the semester, so just keep that in mind. Now let's think. We know what the command is to copy. Now, how do you, what is this one doing? What's the, in words, what is this entry doing? Let's look first of all at this one, right? So what is, because that's a new one now. Go back. That's the third one, day of the month, okay? And day of the month is defined as numeric day within a month. The range goes from 1 to 31. Know that now. This is day of the month. From 1 to 31. All right, so who wants to address this one?
I could give it a shot. So on the first day of each month at 2 a.m.
All right, so
every 30 minutes.
On first day of each month, right?
Right.
All right, on the first day, so the first, yeah, you know, so today, right? Today is the
Right.
first day of the month, so it's 1 February. Exactly. So go ahead.
At 2 in the morning, 2 a.m.
2 or 3.
Isn't it 2? Because midnight 0. Oh wait, yeah.
Right? The same question. Yeah, I know it's not consistent. I don't know why, but yeah, but it's at 3, right? So at 3.
Yeah. Okay. At 3 a.m. every 30 minutes.
Mhm.
It's gonna copy my
Every
file
30 minutes?
to the desktop.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Oh wait, yeah. At 3:30 a.m.
30, right? When you see
Yeah.
the
I got it mixed
at
up.
every 30 minutes, it would be something like this.
Right.
30, 0, 30, 0. But good, very good. Once at the 30-minute mark, exactly at 3 a.m. and at the 30-minute mark. Very good. Exactly. So you run the script. I don't know why I run script.
I think I just overthought it.
Yeah, no, it's how it is. You know, you got to
Right.
practice these, have it written down in your cheat sheet. So run script on first day of each month. I missed that too. All right, so run script on first day of each month, like today, February 1st, it would run today. It would have ran at 3:30 a.m. All right, very good. All right, let's try another one. So let me change. All right, so let's do another one here. Let's do 32 asterisk 0, 6. Remember, that's one field. And then, you know, something similar, Python, my script. Usually for these, I would recommend putting in the full path. Okay, so putting in like / home / user, you know, all of that. So it has no trouble finding the script, but otherwise it should be pretty easy. Python my script, right? So you have that, and it goes from, okay, so that's the values. So now again, the same thing. What is this new field? Go back. It is weekday. Okay, that's the first thing we want to take a look at. So it's weekday. Then weekday, we can see is day of the week, and it goes from 0 to 6, where 0 is Sunday. So we go back here. So this is day of week. Day of week. Okay, 0 and 6. So what about this one? Who wants to try this one?
I'll give it another shot. So at 2:30 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, it's gonna run the script.
on Saturday and Sunday, right? Because Sunday is 0 and Saturday is 6. Very good. So it runs the script. Very good. Runs script, right? At 2:30, right? So 2 a.m. 2:30 a.m. in the morning on Saturday and Sunday. Very good. All right. So that's, that I think that's enough examples for now. We'll do a couple more because these are easy, right? So these are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But there are maybe special cases or special situations where this syntax might feel like one field contradicts the other field. So we'll look at those special cases. But before we take a look at that, we will be using this mechanism quite a bit, called a mechanism called output handling. And so we're gonna, before I move on with cron tabs, I want to cover a little bit of output handling, given that it's a very important thing that you do sometimes in everything, right? So whenever you're writing a command, and certainly we can use it in the cron tabs themselves. So let's take a look at this one. This is not cron or task scheduling. This is its own miscellaneous, one of the miscellaneous topics called output handling. But it relates to redirecting data. So for instance, why is this placed here? Like, I have my cron entry and I say Python, my script, script.py or something like that. But then this has output. This file has output. And what do I do with this output? How do I handle my output, right? And that's what's called output handling, right? So this will tie in to one of our topics on parallel computing. So how to take, using computers to do really complex problems, right? So all in Linux, of course, all the commands. And so this is very important. So what you would say, no, I don't want to handle data on the terminal. I just want to handle data in my script. It's all going to be, because I love writing scripts, and I don't want to do it on the terminal. Well, the trick is that the terminal is very efficient. Okay, the terminal, I wanted to make this better, actually made it worse. The terminal is really efficient. So let's say, for instance, you guys are probably soon taking your data structures course. And in that data structures course, you'll learn about sorting, values, etc. And you learn all the algorithms. It turns out the terminal can do sorting. You can actually sort things out on the terminal. And the advantage of sorting it on the terminal, it's going to be much, much faster. It's really optimized for that. Another thing I like to do on the terminal is, for instance, I don't write code sometimes. Let's say I have a huge file. I have a really big file, and I want to split it into little files, right? So that it's not such a big, because I want to load it up to a server, or I want somebody to download it to their home, but their internet is not that great. So downloading one huge file might be a problem. So things that I like to do on the terminal are things like that. I want to, what did I say? I want to sort values. We'll see an example of that later. Or I want to take, one of the problems I'll give you at some point is, you're going to have a really large file, and then what's the command to split? So really, instead of writing code, you literally just one line command, one line command on the Linux terminal, grab your file, split it, you figure out in bytes or how many lines you want in there, those kinds of things. So that's where this is going. My point is, the terminal is not just about, oh, I'm going to run ls and see the contents of this folder. the terminal is a tool itself. So the terminal is a tool, right? And you can do things that normally you would think of as, oh, I'm going to have to write that in some code. Well, as it turns out, you can just write a command on the terminal. And it's good to know that I'm not going to cover every single command, obviously, but we are definitely going to cover some of these as we go along in the semester, and we start looking at, you know, more complex. I want to stress that again, just kind of an aside, a commercial, if you will. There's two projects in this course, right? Project A and Project B. Project A is configuring several Linux systems, and so it's a fairly complex Linux configuration. When we start the DNS topic, DNS, one of the ideas there is that we'll talk about the service and how it works, but one of the things is it's a mini configuration. You're in the sysadmin course about Linux, so you need to learn how to configure complex services. So the DNS one will be a simple, it's a very simple configuration, right? But obviously it'll start to force you to really concentrate when you do things in Linux, because it's not very forgiving if you have several steps and you do one incorrectly. But anyway, that's an aside, just wanted to point that out. All right, so now let's go back to output handling. And I already stated the motivation as to why we do that. So now let's just think about it, right? So what are some things that you can do? Right, so things that you can do in output handling include redirecting. That's one of the more important ones. Redirecting. So redirecting what? Redirecting data to a file. So for instance, you run a script about monitoring some data, or you analyze some logs or something like that. And now you need to take the result of your analysis and redirect it to some text file, right? So to store it. So how do you do that? So it's got this very strange notation that looks something like this. 2 greater than simple, ampersand, 1 greater than simple, my file. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. But in the command line, you wrote some commands and information, and then you had this strange thing there that almost makes no sense if you look at it, unless you actually think about it, and then it should make sense. So this is actually the trick, and the essence of redirection is this part over here. Okay, these are just variables, actually. Okay, well, we will look at quite a bit, at least a couple of times. All right, so another example, and we've already started. You've heard me say this a couple of times. I say like netstat -na pipe grep TCP, right? So pipe is a concept also in output handling. So I could, sometimes it's called piping. All right, and it's basically what the name implies. You have a source, then you create a pipe, and the source sends something through the pipe to the destination, right? And usually that is represented by this symbol. It's not a / or a backslash. It is in your keyboard, the straight line. It's usually that key above your enter button, okay? The little straight one, vertical. So that we can pipe things. So for instance, this is an example, pipe through mail, right? So like if you want to mail something, remember that a server can be an email server. And so you can configure a service to handle that. Okay. So for instance, here I'm going to do similar thing, 2 ampersand 1. And I still need to talk about these. But notice here, instead of the greater than symbol, now I use the pipe. And then over here, I say something like mail.route. So that just implies that I'm using the mail program, right? The mail, obviously it needs to be configured. By default, it's not configured on any of the VMs that you're using this semester, but you can always just install it and configure it. And there are various versions. Another example of output handling sometimes is that you do have a file that generates data, a lot of data maybe, like verbose commands of what's going on, or it's got some output results, calculations, whatever it is, but you just don't care about it. You don't want that data, you just want it to run. So what's gonna happen is the program itself is running and it's creating this data. But instead of printing it out to the terminal, you can redirect it and throw it away. Like if you throw it into, like in Linux, the black hole, we'll take a look at what that usually is. And it's just kind of like a place where you can throw something and it just goes away. All right, so to do that then, let's call this one discarding. So that's another area of output handling where we can do discarding. So as you can see, going back to the cron entries, now you have even more power, because if I just take this example that you're looking at over here of, like the dates and all that information, and then the Python of my script, now I can say, just like I had before, right? I can take 2 ampersand 1, and guess what? I want to redirect to my file. You see that? So now you have a little bit more power, because you can run the script with cron. The script does some kind of analysis of a log file, and then the output gets sent over to some place, your file. So these are the kinds of problems that you will have to do. So whenever I say, and by the way, I want the results in a file, this is what I mean. So you will need to redirect your output. So for instance, or in the case of discarding, you actually don't care about the results. You just want to get rid of it. So discarding usually goes to the dev null interface, dev null. So dev, so as you know, the file system, again, we haven't really talked about it, but we got the root directory, and then one of the nodes is dev. And dev stands for devices. Stands for devices. So a device is, things that you can have on the computer, like your keyboard and things like that. But also your disk. But also you have this actually built in, the device null. And that just means it's like a black hole. You send something there, and it's basically discarded. Okay? So we'll see an example of that in a second. Let's say that you have, again, 2 redirect, 1. But this time you redirect, and where do you redirect to? You redirect to dev null. Okay? So that's how that should work. So the question you probably have now is, so, that's all, but what exactly is, so what does to this 1 mean, right? So that's the question you probably have. What does that mean? So basically now we're going to list out these parameters. Okay, I'm going to list out these parameters. And, just that gives you, as I said, a little bit more power now, because you can use these in your cron entries to either send yourself an email, right? So it would be nice, like imagine a situation where you remember how we wrote a script for checking port opens and port closed ports, right? So imagine you do that script. You run it at 2 a.m. every day. You run the script. It checks the ports. It finds that the ports are not open, so it sends that out. If it's not open, it sends it out to mail.root, right? So what happens there? You get an email. So you're at home, and the server can't go down because that's part of your your responsibility. So at home, then boom, you get an email, and guess what? The server's down. Do you guys see the power of this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically what we're doing. And, you know, later on in the semester, we're going to look at other ways like, you know, SNMP type protocols that also do that. But in essence, this is pretty easy is my point. It's pretty straightforward. Just by, you know, having, you know, the cron entry combined with a script, combined with redirection, where the output is now piped into your email facility, and then that email gets sent out to you and you get it at home, or you get a text message or some kind of approach like that. So that's really the idea. So now let's take a look at, so the question is, what does the 2 greater than ampersand 1 mean, right? So what is the meaning of those over there? So let's think about it. So the 2 means all right, so first, before we do that, we have to talk about a process. So whenever you run a program, let's say you have a program that is running, right? So that program is associated with a process, right? That's running in your computer. And you guys are familiar with that. You have a process there. It's running in the background. As it turns out, this process has several things associated with it. And these things are usually these what are called descriptors. Or you can just think they're variables, right? So they have, you know, a standard error, right? And a standard output, basically. They have a standard output and a standard error, and there's standard in also. So they have all these variables associated with them. So whenever you make a reference to this 2 and this 1, what you're doing is you're referencing those descriptors, okay? That's what you're doing. So basically here we can say that 2 refers to the second file descriptor of a process, which in this case is the standard error. Okay, so if your process errors out, right, you get that information. You can take a look at it. Let's go to the next page. This symbol, right, the symbol that, you know, that symbol there, the greater than, means redirection. That is to say, you take whatever is in standard error, that descriptor of the process, and you just send it. You're gonna like send whatever that is, send it somewhere. You know, that's why you have a final destination. Like in our example, the final destination was, you know, concatenating it with this one and then applying it to the my file, or you want to send it to dev null, or you could have sent it to email, you know, something like that. That's basically the idea. The next one is the ampersand 1, right? So that's another one. And this is also the so that is going to stand for the standard out, which is usually the output of the file. Whatever by default the output of the file would have been, it goes in there, standard out. Later on in the semester, we will see how we can use standard in and standard out also in a Python script. So it might be that you actually want to get from some process that's running in the background its output, so that then you can use it in your own script. And you can change the, chain, you know, the word chain. So you can chain these so that you redirect from one to the other, pipe from one to the other. So number 1 is ampersand 1, sorry, is standard out. Stands for standard out, right? We should say that. And it's basically the output of the process. So we can think of it as the output of the process, okay? So that's what that is. The output of the process. All right. So then, so we can say in conclusion, so when you use 2 greater than ampersand 1, that thing that you've seen me use, basically what you're saying is, so when you use this, you redirect, standard out and standard error to somewhere. That's really all it is, to some destination, to somewhere like dev null. Or some file. And it is as simple as that, because you know this redirection, I can't stress, although it seems so trivial, it is extremely important, right? And extremely powerful, and it allows you to take any output from any process and just dump it into a file. And so that creates basically logs. It creates these buckets of information that then you can go in and modify, basically. All right. Any questions so far?
I don't think so.
Pretty easy, right? Okay, I will, if you guys remind me, please remind me at the end of the class today. We're almost over, but please remind me. I figured out recently on Zoom how to take the slide, because usually I just load it the slides, I think, and you can print those, I guess. But I believe now I know how to create a PDF also. Yeah, so I will try to save this as a PDF. You can also print it out, have it as a handout. We're almost done. So we'll do, so now that you understand this about this redirection, right? Redirection, then I can basically use it a little bit more, you know. So now let's do an example. Let's go back to this. So remember, again, reminders. So now we go back to Crontab, just so that we can, you know, incorporate that strange looking thing, but now you understand sort of what it is. So let's do, so reminder, Crontab entries. So Crontab entries must be a single line. Don't forget that. It's a common mistake. I see students, they write really long, especially because they use long paths. So be careful with that. So Crontab entries must be a single physical line in the file. Okay. So let's do another example then. All right, let's do this one. 30. $30, 11, 31, 12. Right, and then we're going to use So this just means user bin wall. Wall is writing to the wall of the server. It's like a message for everyone who's logged in on the server. It's a way of communicating with all of them. And then you just say, this just means it's kind of a redirection as well, what you're sending. And then you say happy, or actually, then you say a message. And you guys tell me what the message should be. This is an old question I used to write on the exam. So I would say like, what is the message? Okay, so what is the message and what is happening here? Anyone? Forgot
You
one?
write to wall on December 31st at 11:30.
So you're saying December 31st. Uh-huh. Yeah, go ahead.
At 11:30 a.m. I believe.
Oh, at 11:30 a.m., right?
Right.
So probably then this is wrong. It should be 23.
Yes. So that would be 11:30 p.m.
11:30 p.m. And what would you write on?
Probably Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Very good. Happy New Year. Yeah, exactly. So it runs, runs the wall command. Runs the wall command on December 31st at 11:30 p.m. I think what I used to do is I would just put 11 there just to kind of trick students into thinking, no, he probably meant, so they would always tell me like 11 p.m. and that's what it was. So runs the wall command at 11:30 on December 31st, yes. And it says basically Happy New Year. And that's it. Pretty good. All right, now let's do, I think, what time is it? It is, yeah, so let's do another example. This one is a little bit more complex. All right, so let's go to a new page. All right, so this one will be, all right, so it's like this. I used to do this as a quiz in the class, a pop quiz, but I'm not gonna do that here. All right, and then Python, my script.py, and then this is this would be 1, and then I'm just gonna redirect it to my file. So you can see, so now this gives you a completion where I've linked basically redirection with cron entries. So you know the process my script is gonna run. Well, anyway, so you got to describe this. So that's what the whole problem is. You got to describe this whole thing. So who wants to try this one? This one's a little bit more complex. Remember, here we have, go back to that little table, day of month, month and weekday, right? Day of month, month and weekday. Let me just write that in there. Day of month, month, and week. All right, so who would like to try this one?
I'll give it a shot.
Go ahead.
So on the Monday of the week of January 1st, or maybe if it's January 1st on a Monday, all day or just once my script will be outputted to my file.
Right, so you run, so definitely the command, you run the command, right? The script, sorry, and then you redirect it to your output file. Very good. Now the question is, when does this run, right? So you said it runs January 1st?
If it's on a Monday, or it's either, I'm guessing maybe the Monday of that week.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what the
Yeah,
weekday.
Exactly. I know. This
Yeah.
That's why it's in the.
Yeah.
So really, this one it's a little bit confusing because there's a little trick here. You have the possibility when you do cron tabs to OR, like anding or ORing in Boolean tables, right? So basically, it means that as long as it meets one of the conditions, it'll do it. So in this case, if you think about it, it's a special case where you can say day of the week. And so, this is a tough one. Day of the week, which is, day of the week. And day of the month. Day of month are ORed. Right? So if both are filled in, the entry is run on that day of the month, right? So the first day of the month, and on a matching day of the week. Therefore, this entry would run January 1st, right? You said that, correct?
Yeah.
January 1st, and also every Monday. Do you see that? Do you guys
Okay.
that idea? So I know this one's tough, but this introduces this possibility that if both are filled in, the entry is run on that day of the month and on matching day of the week. So therefore, this entry would run January 1st, as you said, and also every Monday. So when the designers, were building this, they probably thought, okay, this gives us more flexibility. So, and apparently so that kind of works. Does this make sense, guys? Any questions so far?
I think it makes sense.
Makes sense, all right. Any other questions? No? All right, so let's talk a little bit in the few minutes. There's more like data on the lecture, but we'll hold off to the next time. So right now, what I want to do is I want to save this. So the first thing I want to do is save this as a PDF. So give me a second. Yeah. Okay, so I believe that did it. Not sure, honestly. All right, so I believe that did it. Otherwise, you have the PowerPoints as well, but if it worked, I'll save it. All right, the other thing I want to do now, let's go over to the Brightspace. All right, we'll just talk a little bit about the lab this week. As you can see, you should be seeing the lab assignment. And here it is, right? So there's going to be a Wireshark reading, as you can see, and I'll talk about all of this on Wednesday, I really just want to point out it's got TCP dump, so we'll talk about TCP dump a little bit. And then it's got, you know, some examples of cron tabs. Cron tabs again, and running a Perl script, which I'll give you on Wednesday. And then, you know, there's a few problems. And I may add a few more, so we'll see. Okay? Guys, so this will be the lab assignment. You can start if you'd like. You have enough material right now that you can start doing some of this. Okay? In particular, you can start, you know, to look at these, kind of work out the cron entries. This provides all the details that you need to get started, how to start cron and everything. And then on Wednesday, I'll go over a few more of these things. I'll give you the Perl script. By the way, if you haven't noticed already, if I go, let me go back to, I think something I've had some questions about. If you go to Brightspace, and then you go to the table of contents, and then you go to admin and click on the website and go to the website, right? You guys, if you're seeing that, click on the website. All right, so you should be seeing the website. Now, if you click on GitHub here, click on GitHub, some of the scripts that we will be doing in the class, like basics, you know, which we did, right, are here, okay? So I've uploaded a lot of the scripts that that we will be using this semester, and they're there, okay? So you can always just take a look at them also. Like for instance, the Perl script that we will be doing this weekend is right there, right? So there it is. And so, you know, I just wanted to point that out in case you had missed that. All right, so this is a good stopping point. So I'll stay for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, I'm going to stop